November 18th, 2017, Istanbul, the industrial district of Bağcılar, an area where the density of manufacturing sites and warehouse terminals leaves no room for случайных прохожих at night. In the parking lot outside the gates of a textile machinery factory owned by Ibrahim Yildiz, his personal vehicle sits idling. The engine is running. The headlights are on. According to the case file, there are two people inside: 19-year-old Tatiana Chekranova and Ibrahim himself. Security cameras mounted on the building's facade captured the beginning of the incident. Inside the vehicle, Tatiana's condition suddenly changes. Her body begins making uncontrolled movements. Her jaw locks tightly. Ibrahim makes an initial attempt to help. He uses the remaining water from a bottle in the car, trying to bring her back to awareness. But the convulsions intensify. Realizing that basic aid isn't enough, Ibrahim Yildiz decides to retrieve a new bottle of water from the factory's office building. He steps out of the driver's seat, leaving the key in the ignition, and shuts the door behind him. At that moment, the vehicle's built-in security system activates. The electronics, designed to prevent theft when the engine is running without the driver, lock the central doors. Ibrahim is left outside. Through the glass, he watches as Tatiana's condition escalates into a critical phase. Instead of using heavy objects or tools available on the factory grounds to immediately force entry into the car, the man pulls out his phone. He calls his cousin, demanding that he bring a spare set of car keys from another company office located far from Bağcılar. The wait lasts 40 minutes. During this entire time, Tatiana remains trapped in the enclosed space, without proper airflow or qualified medical assistance. The cameras record Ibrahim moving around the car, but making no attempt to physically break in. When the spare keys finally arrive and the vehicle is opened, Tatiana is already in a state of terminal coma. She is transported to a state hospital in Istanbul, where doctors determine a fatal stage of brain hypoxia. To understand how events led to this moment, we have to go back to early 2017, St. Petersburg. Tatiana Chekranova's life before her departure was built on discipline and structured upbringing. Her family was considered stable. Her father, Dmitry Chekranov, served in law enforcement, and her mother, Zinaida Chekranova, created handmade souvenir dolls. Tatiana herself studied at the Moscow Cadet Corps, and later at the boarding school for girls of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. These are closed, highly structured institutions with a military-style routine, where every minute of the day is scheduled and students are under constant supervision. After graduating, Tatiana chose medicine. She enrolled in the Bekhterev Medical College on a state-funded track. At the college, she specialized in nursing. Classmates and instructors later described her as a high-performing student. Her academic record was filled mostly with top marks. By the end of her third year, in early summer 2017, Tatiana Chekranova made a decision. She would pause her education. She arranged an academic leave, convincing her parents that she needed independence and a chance to earn money. Dmitry and Zinaida initially opposed the idea, insisting she complete her degree. But after long discussions, they agreed to let their daughter go. The timeline of Tatiana Chekranova's move from St. Petersburg to Istanbul contains a critical gap, one later reconstructed by investigators through airline ticket records. In June 2017, Tatiana convinced her parents she had received a job offer as a dealer at a high-end casino in Istanbul. But a review of Turkish law makes that version impossible. Gambling had been fully banned across Turkey since 1998, and online casinos were outlawed in 2006. Legal jobs in that industry hadn't existed for nearly 2 decades, and someone with law enforcement experience, like her father, could have easily verified that. Still, in June 2017, Tatiana departs from Pulkovo Airport. Upon arrival in Istanbul, she doesn't leave the transit zone at Ataturk Airport. Instead, she immediately transfers to a domestic flight bound for northern Cyprus. This region operates under a unique international status, recognized only by Turkey, effectively placing it in a legal gray zone. That makes it an ideal environment for industries operating outside strict global oversight. In northern Cyprus, the gambling sector is fully legalized and primarily caters to wealthy clients from mainland Turkey seeking unrestricted razvlečenja. According to investigative records, Tatiana's actual activities in the region were tied to private companion services. Based on statements from acquaintances, the cost of her time was approximately $500 per night. The industry there operates through closed VIP events, private villas, luxury yachts, spaces carefully shielded from public view. It was in this environment that 19-year-old Tatiana met 26-year-old entrepreneur Ibrahim Yildiz. Her time in Cyprus marked the beginning of a new relationship. After several weeks of communication, Ibrahim предложил ей переехать с ним в Стамбул, where his primary business was based. He promised full financial support and an end to her involvement in the casino scene. Tatiana accepted. In doing so, she effectively chose a path of complete financial dependence on her new partner. Arriving in Istanbul with Ibrahim, she experienced the city for the first time, not as a transit passenger, but as a resident of the industrial district of Bağcılar. There, Ibrahim rented an apartment for her within close proximity to his factory. The arrangement created conditions of near-total social isolation, limiting her contact with the outside world to a small circle of his acquaintances. Ibrahim covered everything: rent, food, daily expenses. Meanwhile, Tatiana regularly sent her parents photos, expensive restaurants, large bouquets, carefully maintaining the image of a beautiful life. Their social circle in Istanbul remained narrow, confined to Ibrahim, his brother, and their associates. Tatiana had almost no interaction with the local Russian-speaking community, aside from occasional messages with one friend. In those conversations, she mentioned that Ibrahim was serious, that things were moving toward marriage. But beyond the walls of that apartment, the reality looked different. Tatiana's status remained undefined. Her presence in Bağcılar was dictated entirely by Ibrahim's convenience. He could visit her between shifts at the factory. The illusion of stability was sustained through gifts and promises. At the same time, her social isolation in a foreign country became absolute. By mid-November 2017, the conflict between Ibrahim Yıldız's personal life and his family's expectations had reached a breaking point. Ibrahim came from a conservative Turkish family, where parental authority plays a decisive role. His relatives categorically refused to accept Tatiana Chekranova. The reasons were clear: religious differences and her social standing. To them, she was a foreigner, someone they believed was interested only in their son's financial resources. They demanded that Ibrahim end the relationship and choose a bride from within their own circle. According to Tatiana's mother, Zinaida Chekranova, in the days leading up to the tragedy, there was a noticeable trevoga in her daughter's voice. Tatiana told her parents back in St. Petersburg that Ibrahim's family had turned openly hostile, and that the couple had supposedly decided to run away in secret, planning to get married against their wishes. On November 18, 2017, Tatiana made her final phone call home. She said that Ibrahim had invited her on a romantic trip into the mountains. She emphasized that there would be no cell service in that area, and that she wouldn't be able to call for several days. She asked her mother not to worry, and promised to reach out as soon as she returned to Istanbul. That detail, the warning about losing contact, would later become a key element in the investigation, raising serious questions for her parents. Zinaida would later recall that the message sounded like an attempt to Zaranya explain a prolonged silence. After that call, Tatiana's phone went dark. While her parents in St. Petersburg were waiting for news of a secret wedding, events in the industrial district of Bağcılar began to unfold in a way that had nothing to do with a romantic mountain getaway. November 18, 2017. In the ER of a state hospital in Istanbul, doctors officially pronounced Tatiana Chekranova deceased. She was admitted in a coma. Resuscitation efforts continued for over an hour, but they were unsuccessful. Information about her death was immediately forwarded to law enforcement. During the initial examination, injuries were found on the body of the 19-year-old Russian citizen that did not align with a natural passing. Along her back were multiple linear bruises and hematomas with clearly defined edges. A particularly specific detail: soft tissue damage between the toes on both feet. These findings sharply contradicted the version of events Tatiana had shared with her mother during that final call. As we know, she claimed she was heading into the mountains with Ibrahim, where there would be no signal. But phone geolocation data and police reports placed her at an industrial site in Bajalar. The mountains turned out to be misinformation, used to justify her disappearance from communication. At the time of examination, there were no signs consistent with being in a wooded or mountainous environment. No dirt, no leaves, no drag marks on her clothing. Investigators also noted the absence of marks typically associated with restraints. The contrast between the story of a romantic trip and the reality of an industrial parking lot became the first major red flag for Dmitry Chekranov, her father, who had a background in law enforcement. The pattern of bruising on her back suggested the use of an elongated object. Based on this, the family immediately put forward a theory involving a severe beating and forced euthanasia in the basement areas of the factory. Though the official forensic examination had not yet been completed, shortly after the official confirmation of Tatiana Chekranova's death, Ibrahim Yildiz was taken into custody by Istanbul security authorities for questioning. The interrogation took place at a police station in an industrial district on the outskirts of Istanbul. In the initial phase of the investigation, the businessman presented his version of events, a version that would later form the foundation of his defense. Ibrahim confirmed that the evening began with alcohol and prohibited substances inside his vehicle. According to the interrogation transcript, he stated that when Tatiana experienced her first episode, he was sitting beside her in the car. He described splashing cold water on her face from a bottle in the cup holder, trying to bring her back. But her jaw had locked, and her body continued to convulse. That moment became the starting point of a critical mistake. Believing he needed more water, Ibrahim stepped out of the car to grab another bottle, triggering the automatic door lock system. Investigators focused closely on what he did next. Ibrahim insisted that calling his cousin was the only decision he could make in a state of panic. He claimed he believed the episode might pass on its own by the time the spare keys arrived. But investigators identified a major contradiction. In the parking lot of his own factory, there were tools and heavy objects readily available, items that could have shattered a window in seconds. During questioning, Ibrahim admitted he chose not to do that. He feared drawing attention from patrol officers to the prohibited substances inside the car, and he didn't want to damage expensive property. That admission became central to the charges of criminal negligence and leaving a person in danger. But there was a deeper reason behind his hesitation. While Ibrahim was giving his statement, police expanded their investigation beyond his textile operation into his connections within the gambling industry in northern Cyprus. Investigators began to suspect that the factory may have served as a front for managing financial flows tied to VIP entertainment networks and gray market casinos. His connection to Tatiana in Cyprus, within the private companion scene, suggested he was not just a casual client, but someone deeply involved in that closed network. His panic at the idea of breaking into the car or contacting emergency services was likely driven by a desire to protect those hidden assets and connections. These ties, linked to influential figures in the underground gambling world, supported a lifestyle far beyond what a small manufacturing business could realistically provide. Any exposure could have triggered a large-scale investigation into his finances. In that moment, protecting those interests appears to have outweighed everything else. To establish a clear explanation for the injuries found on Tatiana's body, Istanbul police obtained full access to her phone and cloud storage. What they found was extensive. hundreds of photos and videos recorded inside the apartment. The content pointed to a specific dynamic in their relationship. The files showed elements of consensual BDSM activity in which both Tatiana and Ibrahim had participated over the previous 4 months. Forensic experts compared the archived material with the physical injuries. The match was exact. The linear bruises across her back were identified as marks consistent with repeated strikes from flexible rods. According to the findings of the Institute of Forensic Medicine, the injuries were inflicted within the context of consensual roleplay involving dominance elements. The tissue damage between the toes was also explained. Injuries like these can occur during intense muscle tension or specific positioning of the feet during such activities. The stage of healing showed that these injuries had appeared just hours before the fatal episode. For Tatiana Chekranova's parents, this information became a serious blow to the family's reputation, and it later shaped their public stance on the case. Forensic specialists confirmed that the marks on her back, despite their alarming appearance, were not connected to the mechanism of her death. At the same time, their presence made one thing clear. What happened inside that car on November 18th was far removed from the romantic mountain trip Tatiana had described to her mother. The entire narrative of her life abroad had been carefully concealed behind photos of flowers and upscale restaurants. The final report on the cause of Tatiana Chekranova's death was prepared by the Forensic Institute in Istanbul after extensive toxicology and histological analysis of internal organs. Experts determined that the immediate cause of death was acute cardiopulmonary failure. Blood analysis revealed a high concentration of alcohol along with prohibited substances. The chemical interaction between these substances triggered a condition known as status epilepticus, a series of severe, continuous seizures during which the brain is placed under extreme stress without the ability to restore normal breathing. It was during this phase that the spasm of the jaw muscles occurred, the same locked jaw that Ibrahim Yildiz described during questioning. The combination of substances led to critical heart rhythm disturbances and pulmonary edema, gradually cutting off the brain's oxygen supply. The medical report reconstructed Tatiana's final minutes in detail. While Ibrahim waited for the spare keys in the industrial parking lot, her body had already entered a state of deep hypoxia. The seizures caused extreme overheating and the breakdown of muscle tissue, placing additional strain on her kidneys. Cardiology experts emphasized that the window for saving her life was no more than 15 minutes from the onset of the first episode. After that point, the changes in the cerebral cortex became irreversible. By the time Ibrahim arrived at the state hospital, Tatiana Chekranova was effectively in a state of clinical death, and the coma that followed was terminal. The family's theory involving possible poisoning by unknown substances was officially ruled out. No foreign toxic agents were found in her system beyond what had been voluntarily consumed. The final autopsy confirmed that the bruising on her back, despite how severe it appeared, had no impact on the outcome. Her death was the result of a chemical failure in the body, intensified by a fatal delay in medical assistance inside a confined vehicle. The investigative reconstruction and analysis of evidence inside the vehicle made it possible to rebuild, minute by minute, the physical sequence of events that unfolded before the doors locked. According to the vehicle inspection report, the front seats were fully reclined, creating space for close physical interaction. Forensic specialists documented traces of biological fluids on the floor mats and headliner. Inside the door compartments, they found the same dominance-related accessories previously identified during the digital forensic review. The reconstruction shows that Tatiana Chekranova was positioned in a semi-reclined posture, with her feet raised onto the dashboard, pressing against the windshield. That body position, combined with intense physical strain, explains the mechanism behind the injuries between her toes. When force is applied against a hard surface at a sharp angle, soft tissue can be damaged by friction and pressure. The course of the evening changed the moment a pill was introduced. According to case materials, Tatiana took the substance from her personal belongings and shared it with Ibrahim Yildiz. Physical activity inside a confined vehicle with the engine running led to overheating, what forensic experts refer to as a heat-stress effect in an enclosed space. This accelerated the chemical reaction of the substance in her bloodstream. The first signs of distress did not appear as a loss of consciousness, but as a sudden and extreme shift in motor activity. In his updated testimony, Ibrahim described how controlled, rhythmic movement suddenly turned into chaotic, involuntary motion. He tried to hold Tatiana steady, but her muscles developed abnormal strength. Investigators later found distinct scratch marks on the steering wheel and gear shift, consistent with fingernails. These were caused as she, in the middle of severe convulsions, grabbed at parts of the car's interior. When the phase of jaw locking began, Ibrahim attempted direct physical intervention. Later, abrasions were documented on his hands. He had tried to force her jaw open using a metal object, most likely a key he had in his pocket. Forensic experts would later identify microscopic enamel damage on Tatiana's teeth, confirming that mechanical attempt. Realizing his efforts weren't enough, he made the decision to step out of the vehicle and get water. The reconstruction identifies this as the critical moment. Ibrahim exits the car, leaves the engine running, and shuts the door. At that exact point, the vehicle's security system activates, locking the doors and effectively sealing the outcome of everything that followed. The trial of Ibrahim Yildiz took place in a criminal court in Istanbul, becoming the final stage in a clash between two legal interpretations. During closing arguments, the prosecution formally abandoned the classification of the case as an intentional crime. This decision was based not only on toxicology results, but also on the absence of motive. Investigators found no evidence suggesting that Ibrahim would have wanted Tatiana's death. Instead, the prosecutor focused on the legal concept of criminal recklessness. According to the case materials, Ibrahim, having access to tools and being on the grounds of his own business, consciously chose the path of least resistance. He relied on circumstances and chance rather than taking immediate, decisive action. The central legal question became this: was waiting for the spare keys an unavoidable situation or a fatal act of negligence? The defense team for Ibrahim Yildiz built its strategy around the concept of shared responsibility. Attorneys presented legal precedents showing that an adult who voluntarily consumes psychoactive substances assumes the risks associated with their effects. Under Turkish law, this factor can significantly reduce the level of responsibility assigned to the second party involved. At the same time, the issue of the bruising on Tatiana Chekranova's back was formally closed in court. After digital evidence from the couple's private archive was introduced, those injuries were no longer treated as an aggravating factor. The judge dismissed any interpretation involving aggressive behavior, recognizing the injuries as part of private, consensual activity. This decision automatically removed allegations related to prolonged mistreatment. The final ruling was based on a charge equivalent to causing death through negligence by inaction. The court found that Ibrahim had violated a legal duty of care. However, during sentencing, the judge applied a provision allowing mitigation due to the absence of malicious intent. Ibrahim received a suspended sentence, a penalty that does not involve actual prison time, provided he complies with the law during the probation period. Another factor influencing the verdict was the Chekranov family's refusal to accept financial compensation. Under Turkish law, even an attempt to offer compensation can be considered a sign of rehabilitation, regardless of whether the family accepts it. Representatives from the Russian consulate, present at the announcement of the verdict, confirmed that all procedural standards had been followed. In the end, the Turkish legal system classified the incident as a tragic convergence of circumstances, where responsibility was effectively shared between Tatiana, who had voluntarily taken prohibited substances, and her companion, who failed to respond quickly to a technical lock failure. The sentence took effect immediately. Ibrahim Yildiz walked out of the courtroom without escort, retaining full control over his business operations. The story of Tatiana Chekranova came to an end in December 2017 at Smolenskoye Cemetery in St. Petersburg. The costs of transporting her body and arranging the burial were covered entirely by the Chekranov family, who refused any contact with representatives of Ibrahim Yildiz. After the funeral, the family's public activity stopped completely. Her parents, Dmitry Chekranov and Zinaida Chekranova, no longer gave interviews or reached out to government authorities. This sudden shift, from public accusations to complete silence, coincided with the moment they received the full results of the Turkish forensic reports. Those documents, Podrobno outlined details of their daughter's hidden life, including her activities in northern Cyprus and the private aspects of her personal relationships. Confronted with facts that could not be reconciled with the image of a disciplined cadet graduate and medical student, the family gradually withdrew from any public pursuit of the case. Tatiana's name faded from official reports, leaving behind only unresolved discussions across online communities.